Eyewitness News at 5 starts now. Guitars and instruments ripped off from an Eastside Evansville music store. After several months, police believe they've cracked the case.
Live from WEHT Local, this is Eyewitness News at 5.
Good evening, everyone. A locally owned music store calls itself a victim, but the suspect is one of its own employees.
Over the last few days, Moore's Music in Evansville reported close to $40,000 worth of merchandise stolen. 36-year-old Michael Fisher tonight faces felony charges, accused of stealing dozens of guitars and amplifiers, then trying to pawn them off.
Eyewitness News' Jordan Vandenberg joins us now with more on tonight's top story. Jordan?
Shelley and Brad, this case dates back several months. Last June, Moore's Music was the victim of a robbery, one of its most expensive guitars stolen. That guitar was recovered. Then it went missing again, only to be recovered at a local pawn shop. That was a red flag for detectives, but no one could have expected one guitar would lead to a dozen more, and the alleged suspect behind it all. The soothing sound of a classic six-string strikes nothing but a somber chord for music store owner Pat Moore.
It just makes me sick to my stomach. It really does, to try to be so fair to everybody and work with everyone, and then something like this happens.
Our choice in music says a lot about us. For Pat Moore, it's jazz. Unpredictable, unconventional, but even he could not expect what would happen next.
So my jaw just about dropped down to the floor, and he said that there were several other things that were at the pawn shops.
As a small business, locally owned and operated, you hate to see that type of victimization. And
he said, well, I know who it is. And I asked him, and he said, Mike Fisher.
Mike Fisher, a former employee, now faces felony charges, accused of stealing tens of thousands of dollars worth of merchandise. Fisher, a former co-worker, a so-called adopted family member. But he's also something more.
Hands down, one of the best guitarist musicians in the tri-state area.
His co-workers, his friends, say Fisher's love for the six-string, the way he could make it talk, speaks volumes about his alleged fall from grace.
It's very tragic, I mean, and that's putting it lightly.
Anger didn't even come into the picture. It's just deep hurt because of all the chances that we gave Mike. And then he turns around and does this to us.
He was responsible for a lot of good moods. How people go out and unwind at the end of a hard week. You know, he'd be in charge of making that the best night that they possibly could have. It's just sad, you know, because that's probably not going to happen anymore.
But the beat goes on, even if the riffs of a classic six-string may prove to be a somber swan song. Fisher bonded out of jail shortly after his arrest. As for Pat Moore, most of the stolen guitars and merchandise has been recovered. Jordan Vandenberg, Eyewitness News.